EU Commissioner Magnus Brunner says Ireland is very well placed to adopt the Migration and Asylum Pact and described the Citywest accommodation centre for international protection applicants as an example of best practice. He was speaking in Dublin after visiting the Citywest facility, meeting with senior gardaí and holding talks with Justice Minister Jim O'Callaghan.
The EU's Migration and Asylum Pact seeks to harmonise asylum, migration and border checks with swifter screening, mandatory health and security checks and a streamlined return system. It becomes operational in June, and the visiting EU Commissioner said Ireland is well placed to adopt it and was impressed by the Citywest facility in West Dublin.
Well, what I saw today is that it's working very effectively, well prepared. As I said, the whole system, as we saw, and the way it is organized was just very professional and very human as well. So it's a very good mixture, I would say, and I think as I said, it's a very good example for the rest of Europe.
The Justice Minister says he's ongoing and close contact with his UK counterpart and will take account of whatever measures pass through Westminster, which could have a knock-on impact on Ireland due to the common travel area.
The most important thing I have to say in terms of my engagement with the UK government is that there's cooperation and collaboration between the two of us. That is ongoing and will continue. And it's very important from the point of view of both governments that we have an understanding of each other's issues. And that's why I said before, I commended the Home Secretary for giving me an update in respect of the proposals that happened there.
However, Sinn Féin argues that the government should have struck a bilateral agreement with Britain rather than signing up to the EU Migration Pact.
So what government should be prioritising now is a bilateral arrangement with the UK to ensure that those people who are in Ireland who should be processed in Britain can be speedily returned in order for that to happen. The difficulty, of course, is that the government have signed us up to an EU Asylum and Migration Pact that takes no account of the fact that we are in a common travel area with a state outside of the European Union.
The Minister for Justice disagreed with the Sinn Féin analysis, saying a formal agreement wasn't required because the good relations between Dublin and London allowed him to anticipate problems and legislate if needed. The Commissioner said such migration diplomacy was a good thing, and it seemed to him at least that Britain was just bringing its laws in line with what's already in other EU member states. Paul Cunningham, RT News, Leinster House.
Well, we're joined now in studio by the Justice Minister, Jim O'Callaghan. Thanks for coming in to speak to us this evening. You've had a very busy day. And later this week, you're planning to bring a series of proposals to Cabinet to tighten up migration. Is it correct to say that in the future, Ireland only wants migrants who can support themselves, can support their families and won't break the law?
Well, we also want to be able to provide refuge to people who are fleeing persecution and wars. We've done that for very many years and we will continue to do that. But I suppose the purpose of the new migration laws that I'll be introducing and will become operative in June next year is to try to speed up that process in respect of international protection seeking asylum. But as you say, there's much more to immigration than international protection and asylum. There's issues in terms of issuing visas. We have very many people working in our health system here, providing valuable services. They're doing an excellent job here. And I think what we need is a national migration strategy, a strategy that isn't ad hoc or that just doesn't develop in a haphazard way, but one that is planned. And I think that's the objective of the government in the long run. You
mentioned healthcare workers there, and I was struck last week there was a rally of migrant workers outside Leinster House and they were raising concerns about family reunification. They were carers, essentially, in our system who are essential, I think all would agree. And one woman spoke through tears of waiting up to 3 years to bring her children here to Ireland, despite the fact that she's working and paying taxes. Is it going to take longer in the future for people to have their families come join them?
Well, I hope the whole system will speed up, and that's part of the thing we were looking at today in Citywest in respect of international protection. In respect of family reunification, I certainly would like to see the process speeded up. But also, I suppose, we've got to balance the interests of the people you were talking about, the healthcare workers who are outside Leinster House, but also, I suppose, the interests of the Irish citizens as well, who have a situation whereby we've a limit in terms of the number of people who could come in under family reunification. As we know, our population is increasing approximately 7 times the EU average, so our population is increasing very significantly. And we just need to balance our immigration with ensuring that we treat people very fairly, but at the same time we try to keep some level of control on our population.
Is looking at student visas for people who come here to perhaps study English from Brazil and other countries like that, about 60,000 of those visas are issued a year. Are you looking at
Yeah, that's
that?
an issue. That's an issue I'm looking at. I've had a discussion with my cabinet colleague James Lawless, who's the Minister for Higher Education, in respect to that. And I suppose if you compare the numbers in that, which, as you say, it's 60,000 a year coming, with the numbers in respect of international protection, those seeking asylum, which at present it's up to around 11,600 this year. So there's a large number of people coming in. Which is a reduction,
isn't it?
Oh, it's a reduction from 18,500 last year. So I suppose there are many things I can control and government can control, in particular in terms of the granting of visas. I suppose what makes asylum different is we don't necessarily have control over it because the numbers can fluctuate. But you're absolutely correct. If we want to try to, I suppose, assert control and limits on a population, certainly in terms of issuing visas, that's something that we can fully control ourselves.
What about the UK's stricter migration rules? We can't control those. And I know Sinn Féin has asked for you to have some kind of a bilateral agreement so that if somebody should be claiming asylum in the UK, they can be returned to Britain. Yeah, but
Matt also needs to Matt Carty, the Sinn Féin spokesperson, he also needs to recognise that if the UK is going to enter into a bilateral agreement with us, it's going to be like the bilateral agreement they have with France, which is described as one in, one out. And although I'm very concerned about the numbers of people coming in to claim asylum in Ireland, travelling south over the border from Belfast, my counterpart, Home Secretary Mahmood, is concerned about the number of people coming into Dublin, travelling up north and getting into Britain that way. So it's a two-way process, and I think we just need to be careful that we're not going to have an agreement with the UK which involves us just giving back to them people who've come in here from Britain. It'll be a two-way process. And I think what's much more effective is that I continue the very good cooperation and collaboration I have with the Home Secretary. And I'm conscious as well that previously Britain announced changes in respect to their asylum laws, and there wasn't really much substantive change introduced. So I'm going to keep a close eye in terms of what happens after the statement, see if the law's changed. And if it does affect migratory flows, I'll certainly be going back to my colleagues in government with proposals.
The EU Commissioner on Migration was in Dublin today. You visited Citywest with him, and he said what he saw there was best practice. And it's interesting, there was an article in the Irish Independent today, and there was a woman from Rwanda who had survived the genocide. Both of her parents were killed. And she said being in an IPAS centre in Ireland feels like being in prison without a release date. How long do you think people should spend in an IPAS centre?
Well, I read that article as well, and when you read down through it, the answer was given that the woman had in fact been granted international protection in Ireland. So she shouldn't be in an IPAS centre, and obviously part of the policy I'm introducing is to try to move people on, because you're entitled to accommodation when you're applying for asylum. Once you're granted asylum, you've got to be treated the same way as everyone else. But what's certainly the case is I want to speed up the process for asylum. It's taken too long for too many years. And under the new laws I'll be introducing later this year, and they'll become effective in June next year, I'm going to try to insist that we have applications dealt with within 3 months. And that's going to be in the law. And we're doing it at present. We have a pilot project out in Citywest at present that Commissioner Brunner saw. It's already ensuring that first instance decisions, appeals, and in many respects deportation orders are being issued within a period of 3 months. And that's what I want to achieve across the board in asylum applications.
And you're confident that's going to happen by June?
I am confident will happen from June onwards, from the 12th of June onwards. It's an obligation on us. We'll have it in law. It'll be a requirement to do so, and I'm confident we'll be able to achieve that.
OK, Minister for Justice Jim O'Callaghan, thanks for coming in to us on 6-1.
Thanks, Sharon.